Hi, I'm Ben Carson. I'm alarmed by the fact that the United States of America ranks now 47th in the world in terms of literacy. You know, when I was a youngster in the 5th grade, my idea of a good day was to go to school and goof off all day, and then come home and play outside till dark, and then watch TV until bedtime. As a result of that philosophy, I had no competition for last spot in my class. Fortunately, I had a mother who insisted upon my reading, and I began to read books that opened up all kinds of horizons for me. I read about astronauts and astronomers and research chemists and oceanographers, and began to imagine myself in one of these intellectual positions. And it made a big difference for me. It probably won't make a big difference for the 21 million Americans in the United States who are totally illiterate and cannot read. Nor will it probably open up new horizons for the 20% of U.S. graduates who cannot read their diplomas. There is hope. The empirical research is conclusive on successful methods for teaching reading. It begins with children knowing how to unlock words through phonics. I hope this documentary will be a step to have the world open up for tomorrow's children.
Obviously we cannot remain a leader in the world if we have these kind of literacy problems. Our problems stem from the lack of proper teaching in those primary years when the problem should have been solved. And we know how. It's cost effective. It's just a matter of training these teachers.
In 1990 to accept a grant from the National Institute of Justice to investigate the relationship between juvenile delinquency and reading failure. Shortly after getting into my research, I found that there was more than just a relationship, that reading failure was a cause and may be a major cause of delinquency. I came to this conclusion on work, surprisingly enough, that was done at the turn of the century by Ivan Pavlov. We all know about his conditioned reflex experiments. And what Pavlov discovered was that you can actually create antisocial aggression. To do it, an individual has to have a goal. He has to be pressured, or there has to be sustained pressure to achieve the goal. And he mustn't be allowed to escape the environment, and he must be denied the means to achieve the goal, as strange as that may seem. But as I reflected on it, I realized that that's precisely what we have in our 16,000 school districts throughout the United States. The goal that a student has is academic achievement. Achieving it is the ability to read, write, fluently, accurately, and effortlessly. He must be denied that means due to faulty reading instructions, and he mustn't be allowed to escape that environment, which he cannot do with compulsory attendance laws. For some students, this leads to antisocial aggression, which in a short time then leads to delinquency or juvenile crime.
The confusion comes from what kind of research they're talking about. I'm talking about the experimental research, and most people know what experiments are. They know that if we're going to develop a drug, we try out the drug, and we control carefully how it's administered, and we contrast it with another drug or a placebo or something like that to make sure that it's working. Most people understand what the scientific method is. The scientific method, by the way, has solved practically all of our problems in our modern nation. We've used it in every field of endeavor. Now, the whole language people say, no, we've got to get rid of experimental research. I think it's an expediency on their part because they find that the findings of experimental research don't support what they're talking about. But in any case, they say what we've got to substitute for that is anecdotal evidence. That would be where a person would come into a classroom and watch children when they're in the act of learning. Well, with anecdotal evidence, of course, you can't replicate it because what's going on in the classroom is defined in terms of whoever looks at it, and there isn't any general standard for that. What whole language people want to do additionally to this, you see, they want to ban outside independent evaluations of what's going on in the field of reading. They want to get rid of, in other words, of our standardized reading tests, because the standardized reading tests are the tests that have been used in experimental research on reading development. That evidence is the evidence that shows that whole language is not the superior method for teaching reading that its advocates claim it is.
That we've got 70 years of experimental research. The data is conclusive, from back in Jean Shaw's earliest book up to Marilyn Adams' latest book in 1990, where she's got reviews of research for 20 years. And in this book she states that the research conclusively says children learn to read better if they're taught systematic phonics. And also, Dr. Adams has said to me herself, she knew I was working with the convicted juveniles, that the research supports the fact that any reader, any non-reader at any age benefits from this instruction, not just 6-year-olds.
Besides working in the public school setting, phonics is working very well in our juvenile correctional institutions, where as many as 85% of the residents are illiterate.
As an administrator, I did not totally understand or appreciate what particularly a phonics system might do for our residents as apart from the regular school district. What I did know is that we had students coming to us who had been through public schools through 7th, 8th, even 9th grades that could not read. So we took the opportunity to implement this phonics program. As I see it, we have kids that can now read and are very excited about being able to read. For me personally and for all the staff that have joined in this program, there's that sense that we are giving these residents a dimension to their life that they could not have had were it not for the phonics program. When they leave here, they can do job interviews and they can read applications, and they don't have to feel so disabled, so learning disabled in front of the public as they once did. The kids love it. They just seem to bloom, and behavior problems for these residents significantly go down.
I've stuck with this program for 30 years because obviously it works. I have worked in ghetto areas, in barrio areas, where the Chapter 1 funds, we had so many Chapter 1 students, and we have literally lost Chapter 1 funds because the program works so well. The program includes intensive systematic phonics, which is an absolute must.
I can think of a couple of cadets who couldn't read when they first got here, and by the time they began to wrap the program up, they were excited about challenges in the library in terms of research work and getting an encyclopedia and doing some of the things that you could have never encouraged them to do otherwise. They also became encouragers to their other classmates. Some of the best encouragers I have are other cadets who will sit down with a new cadet who doesn't read and say, "I was right where you were 8, 9, 10 weeks ago, and I can do these skills now. Watch what I can do." And very often this will encourage non-reading cadets to give the program a real shot.
Joey was first sent